This film brings together a series of vignettes by a living historian, portraying Welsh infantrymen in various campaigns through the years. Wales as a nation has raised many fierce and proud warriors through the years, the modern-day infantrymen. Over 320 years ago, the 23rd and 24th Regiments of Foot were raised, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers and the South Wales Borderers, joined 300 years ago by the 41st, the Welsh Regiment. They fought in many gallant battles, from the Anglo-Zulu Wars through to World War I and the campaigns of World War II, up to modern-day Northern Ireland and Operation Banner. Welsh infantrymen took part in all of these operations and many more, and have been awarded bravery medals from the Military Medal, the Military Cross, to over 43 Victoria Crosses.
I'm here all on my own, surrounded by Zulu. I cannot believe I've made it thus far. As I fought my way up for shelter in this cave, I have stripped my dead mates of any spare ammo I can find. I am down to my last 20 rounds. Lads are falling all around me as I scramble for my life. Assegais striking their stomachs, backs and heads, with a huge tidal wave of Zulus bursting through our lines. I cannot believe the carnage I am seeing. The chilling Zulu chants and battle cries are echoing around the hill and the area. As I scrambled up over the rocks, I looked behind me. The battalion are lying all over the ground, and screams of dying men are already haunting me. I thought, no, it can't be. Am I the last? I hope not. Where the hell is Chelmsford and his column? Surely they know we're under attack. It's hard to believe that only a few days ago the column crossed the Buffalo River. During 1877 and 1878, our battalion were engaged in the Caffo War with the natives of Transkei. In March 1878, we were joined by our sister battalion, the 2nd 24th. At the end of 1878, it became clear to us that it would only be a matter of time that we'd be sent to take on the Zulu nation and take it under control. This is following a number of incidents involving the Boer. On the 11th of January 1879, our two battalions had orders to move. We were part of a force who had to cross from Natal and into Zululand in 3 separate columns. We are under the command of Lieutenant General Lord Chelmsford. He has accompanied our left column, which is commanded by Colonel Richard Blinn, 24th Regiment. Our column comprises of 2 guns and 70 men of N Battery, 5th Brigade Royal Artillery, equipped with 2 7-pounder guns, 5 companies of 1st 24th, 1 company of 2nd 24th, also mounted volunteers and Natal Police, with 2 companies of the Natal Native Infantry. Our battalion are regular soldiers and are equipped with the breech-loading single-shot Martini Henry Mark II rifle and bayonet. We are dressed in red wool tunics with a white solar toppy helmet and dark blue woolen trousers with a red piping down the side. On January the 20th, I remember, as we marched to a place near the Buffalo River, Rorke's Drift I think it's called, a company from the 2nd 24th under Lieutenant Bromhead were told to fall out and guard the drift, which I think from speaking to the Corps is going to be a stores and field hospital. We then carried on. We entered the Buffalo River, either by pontoon or wading chest deep. The weight of the water on my wool uniform nearly pulled me under. How I kept up, I'll never know. We then advanced 10 miles east of Rorke's Drift. We had little time to rest, or even drink some water, which was rationed. We are carrying our supplies by ox carts, each of which are being pulled by a team of up to 20 oxen, who are walking a slow and a deliberate pace. A considerable part of the day, I remember, is devoted to feeding and caring for the oxen, as well as having to help push the carts out of the mud. This country is all hilly scrubland, and without any roads, progress is painfully slow. The hilltops have to be picketed, and the country ahead of the column scouted carefully for Zulu, who may hold up in an ambush. We are further hampered by heavy rain, causing the rivers and streams to swell and deepen, and the trail deepens in mud from the oxen and the carts. While still in column, our morale is surprisingly good considering. During the 21st, word has come over, flying around the company. A reconnaissance to the southeast are in contact with the Zulu. At 0400 hours, the order has come for some of the lads from the 2nd 24th and artillery, along with an Natal native contingent, to move out and make contact towards some Zulu that had been seen. We carried on marching. It isn't long before we reach Isandlwana Hill. I and the lads found it uncanny how it looked identical to the Sphinx on our collars, or a crouching lion. We were now 10 miles in Zulu country. The order soon comes to fall out and to start an encampment on the slope of the hill. My company were to keep a picket, or set up the tents in the correct rows. While I was on picket, one of the lads runs up to me. Major Dartnell has made contact with the Zulu. Looks like old Chelmsford is taking most of the column to bring them to battle and defeat them. I thought, that's a bit strange. Split our column up in enemy territory, as well as leave us in a position that the camp was not put in a state of defence. But what do I know? I'm only a private. I looked over as first light appeared. The 2nd 24th, artillery and some of the NNC leave in the direction of where the Zulu are supposed to be. This leaves us with 5 companies of the 1st 24th and G Company of the 2nd 24th under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Pooling. On being relieved from picket duty, I returned to camp to get my head down. It must have been about 07, I think. Just as I was about to lie my head down on my pack, the alarm is sounding. The bugler is clearly blowing for all his worth. I jumped up. What's happening? I asked the lads. Zulu, is the reply by everyone. They've just been seen on the hills to the northeast of the camp. We are ordered to stand to. Come on, move! We then run to the quartermaster and tried drawing out ammunition, but we had to sign for it and it took an age. My company makes our way in quick time to our stand to position. This is on the extreme left of the camp. Lieutenant Dyson and Cavey are yelling out orders to hurry up and get in position. We are 1,500 yards from camp. Corp looks over to the camp. I look round and I can see a rider leaving towards the direction of Chelmsford. A voice comes from within the ranks. It's all right, lads. Help will be on its way. At 10 o'clock, a runner comes to Lieutenant Cavey. We can all hear what is being said. Colonel Dunford is arriving with a party of mounted men and a rocket troop. We all cheered on hearing this. We were then given the order to hold. Corp sent out for more ammo. At 11 o'clock, while still at stand to, we can see mounted infantry ride out towards the direction of the Zulu. At 12 o'clock, a runner comes up and says, Dunford has made contact and is now falling back. We all look at each other in disbelief. Then, suddenly, we all hear a loud noise of what sounded like a train in the distance in front of us. One of the lads with a very strong Welsh accent says, "Where are they, boyo?" "Over there, you dull bugger," replies another. I look at a distance of 1,000 yards. A wall of Zulu are running towards us. They look huge, not one under 6 foot. They are chanting and yelling, nerve-wrecking chants. The Sergeant Major said in a calm voice, "This is it, steady lads, mark your targets and make everyone count. Steady hands, lads." I hear one of the officers say, "Jesus, they must be bypassed Chelmsford and are now moving on us." We are a long way from camp, but not only that, we're out of visual sight too. We are by now all in extended order, engaging the Zulu, who are moving in similar movement to our left. They are keeping us about 800 yards from our line. They appear to be moving in rapid pace, to the left of our position. We are firing so quickly that the smoke is heavy amongst our ranks. This in turn is giving us trouble identifying targets. My barrel is red hot and crackling in the heat. While firing, even a common soldier can see we are being outflanked on the left by Zulu, who look to be in their thousands, and an endless wave of men. We now have orders to pull back to new positions. At this point, the first of the lads are falling, struck by assegai spears from Zulu. Some of the Zulu assegais are thrown at us as we shoot. However, they are careful initially not to get too close to us. They avoid the bayonet, for any Zulu who comes up to stab a soldier is fixed through the throat or stomach and at once fall. I feel of impending doom is falling upon us and the camp. The sun is turning black in the middle of battle. I think quietly it's all over for us seeing this. One of the lads shouts out, "Snap out of it, it's only a ruddy partial eclipse of the sun and it's the height of battle." I know Zulu and their customs and beliefs and will take heart from this. The Zulu by now have now moved in amongst us. The stream of men is endless. You are killing 100 and 1,000 men are behind him. My company by now are no more. We are either dead or wounded. I can see the Zulu are not taking any prisoners and are spearing dead and wounded alike. The order has come from someone, I don't know who, to withdraw to camp. As I try to move, the Zulu are all around us. My flight for life I shall never forget. No track, no path, boulders everywhere. My way is strewn with shields, assegais, blankets, helmets and clothing of all descriptions. Rifles, ammunition, belts and saddles which the horses had managed to kick off, revolvers and God knows what else. I can see the camp is now being overrun. A sea of black warriors and shields chanting as they're running through the camp, cutting down horse and man alike. I stop and look around. No one was to be seen. My company are gone, wiped out. I hold my Martini Henry and make my way towards the hill. I am surprised I have not been followed by Zulu. I look over a boulder at camp. Between the smoke and the Zulu around them, I can see two men on horseback being handed our regimental colours. Next they bolt towards the direction of the Buffalo River. Quickly on their heels are the Zulu. Now I have only one thought: to survive. I first run by crouching up the hill, then scramble over the boulders. I look over. The camp is finished. The 24th are lying in groups, back to back, where they have stood to fight it out. Rings of dead Zulu all about them show how they've held out till the ammunition failed. So, now here I am, probably the last of my battalion. I've just taken a letter from my missus out of my torn haversack and given her a kiss. Goodbye, lass. Oh God, here they come again. It is not known who the last soldier found in the cave is, only that he was a fallen 24th Foot soldier who fought until his death.
I sit here awaiting the arrival of Lord Chelmsford's column to return. News is they are on their way and should be with us any time soon. I'm very tired. I've not been able to find any time to sleep since the Zulus started the attack on us yesterday. We're all exhausted and thirsty. Water was rationed. We ran out late yesterday, the last of it being given to the wounded in the storeroom, which is being used as a makeshift hospital. It seems so long ago now, but it was only 3 days ago my company were told to remain at Rorke's Drift and to guard the stores and the hospital which had just been established itself here. The rest of the column, including the battalion, continued over the Buffalo River and into Zululand. They are going to advance to Isandlwana Hill, only 10 miles east of our position. At this time, we are under the command of Lieutenant Bromhead. Then, earlier yesterday, Colour Sergeant Bourne informed us all that another officer had returned from the column at Isandlwana to fix a pontoon bridge across the river. Lieutenant John Chard, his name is, Royal Engineers, I believe. At around 3 p.m, I was helping to remove stores from one of the buildings to the hospital when I was told of terrible news. Terrible news. The column, including the rest of our battalion and the 1st 24th, had been massacred by thousands of Zulus at Isandlwana. I could not believe what we had been told. It was impossible to believe. It was then that the lads were told that we had a new officer commanding in the form of Lieutenant Chard, with Lieutenant Bromhead, his second in command. News then hit us that the Zulus were making their way directly for us, and they would not be long to reach us. At that time, I was aware that we are only 70 strong, led by Lieutenant Bromhead. Also 100 men from the Natal native contingent, and some lads from the 1st 24th, and a commissariat. There's not many of us to stand against the thousands of Zulus. I was very frightened. I had never been in battle before. The palms of my hands were getting sweaty, and I initially could not stop shaking. Our post consisted of 2 stone buildings, about 40 yards apart, with one being used as a storehouse and the other as a hospital. The order was bellowed by Colour Sergeant Bourne for us to immediately set work to a loophole and barricade the buildings and build makeshift defences, using the mealie bags from the stores to make walls connecting the 2 buildings. At 4:30 p.m, I saw my first Zulu appear to the southeast. They were all stood on a hill overlooking our post. What a sight! I was scared, but in awe at the same time. The Zulu were all chanting, which echoed around the valley. It was this point I noticed that when the Zulu appeared, the Natal native contingent, they bolted. They just ran. There was nothing we could do to stop them. I held on to one of them to stop him jumping over the mealie bags, but he just wriggled so much he got away. This left about 140 of us in total, whom 36 were patients in the hospital itself. On completing the barricade, the order came to stand to. I was stood near the hospital. I held my Martini Henry, and I placed a round in the chamber ready. The first Zulu party looked to be headed by a chief on a white horse. They halted for a moment and then advanced towards us at the run. It appeared they were expecting to surprise us. At 500 yards, we opened fire with telling effect. The smoke from the fire was thick around us, and the sound of gunfire was deafening. Numbers dropped in front of us, but the Zulu pressed on towards us. Taking full advantage of the broken ground, they then appeared to establish themselves in the garden and some uncleared bush near the buildings. Suddenly, we came under fire ourselves. The shots were coming from a ridge behind us. They must have got them from the lads at Isandlwana. They maintained heavy, but fortunately for us, inaccurate fire. "Keep your heads down," was the shout that echoed around the post. Then we were rushed again by the Zulu. The majority were armed with stabbing assegais as they ran at us, and they were chanting loudly. This alone unnerved me. I managed to keep my head down from the fire directed towards us. The order was again given. Fire! I fired so many times that my barrel was getting very hot. Despite the odds of 40-1, we all shot steadily and effectively. Time and time again, the Zulu ran at us and swarmed the barricades. Their courage was extraordinary. and they cared for nothing of their losses as they tried to get over the barricades and into the end room of the hospital building. Many times Lieutenant Bromhead collected a few of the lads, which included myself. We had to drive them off with a bayonet charge. As I charged them with my bayonet fixed, some of the Zulu tried seizing our rifles and tried to pull the bayonets off. Due to the position, no flanking fire was possible along any of our defences, as in case to cause our own injuries. Only due to our tremendous exertions were the Zulu kept at bay. This was especially the case with the fire that was still coming from the hill at the rear. Although inaccurate, it did cause some casualties amongst us. At 6 p.m, the Zulus did finally succeed in setting fire to the thatched roof of the hospital. This was clearly making the building undefendable. The problem then arose on how to keep off the Zulu, while the sick, many of whom were too ill to walk, were evacuated to the safety of the storehouse. I was seeing some gallant deeds done that day. But for the courage of the half-dozen privates of the 2nd 24th, who formed the garrison within the doomed building, a lot of the wounded would have been lost to the Zulu. We fell back from room to room. We fought fiercely with bullet and bayonet to help cover the escape of the sick. I can say with thank goodness, nearly all of whom reached safety. I saw Private Hook walk out of the burning building with Private Connolly being carried on his back. The building was starting to fall inwards as they cleared it. On the evacuation of the hospital completed, we were able to concentrate our defence around the storehouse. There we had an inner link of defence. This had been built out of biscuit boxes. The Zulu attacks continued. Again and again they rushed us, and each time we repulsed them. The smoke from our Martini Henrys making visibility difficult, and the stench of death was all around us. Nightfall came quickly, but the attacks continued. We were helped very much by the light coming from the burning hospital. As the night wore on, the Zulu attacks appeared to lose their sting, with only the odd attack being fought back. As dawn broke, the attack stopped. The Zulu appeared to have left. I could see the bodies of hundreds of dead Zulu in and around the barricades, with many more on the broken ground outside. It's been a few hours now, and no sign of the Zulu. Some of the lads who had been sent out have just returned, confirming they've gone. I can't believe it. It's now 8 a.m, and information has been spread around the post. Lord Chelmsford's column are appearing over the hill. Just been told I need to now go and line up on parade for roll call. Orders just come over to stand down. For some of the lads, they're going to keep their eyes open. Jerry. Thinking of making myself a brew would be the first of the day. I cannot believe I've just survived the worst day of my life. The horrors I've just witnessed are embedded into my brain and will live me forever. It's a long way from when I first joined up. On August the 4th, we declared war on Germany. The lads and me were full of excitement. For days after, we spoke on how we were going to join up together and sort out the Hun. We were all working as dock workers at Swansea docks. Even the foreman was urging us to go. We'd heard all over the town that the Lord Mayor was starting our town's own battalion. On the 25th September, I, along with the rest of the lads, we rushed to the recruiting station at the Guildhall in Somerset Place. Some of us hadn't even told our families we were joining up. I'd signed on the dotted line. I was so excited. I was now going to be part of the 14th Service Battalion, Welsh Regiment. We were so proud. We were being nicknamed the Swansea Pals Battalion. Every town in Wales were going to do the same. A few days later, I was placed in A Company. Received our uniform and kit. We even stood outside the George pub in the Mumbles on parade. My family were watching, I was so proud. But then we moved on for training for 2 years. On the 2nd of December 1915, we embarked from Southampton, and we disembarked for Le Havre. In January 1916, our battalion moved into the line. Oh, if I only knew then what the horrors I would be seeing. We'd only recently been, along with all the other Welsh battalions, formed into the 38th Welsh Division. We were now part of Lloyd George's own Welsh army. But here I am now, sitting knee-deep in mud, and with the stench of death all around me. Only a few days ago, we were told that the big push that was going to be taking place. Although our battalion were not used during the original offensive, we were spared the carnage of the 1st of July. I was too well aware of the massacre that we had on that day. 60,000 lads lost in one day for hardly any objectives taken. I knew what was waiting for us over the coming days. It was just a matter of time. Out of the original lads who I signed up with, we've already lost 1 or 2 to the sniper fire, bombs, or even trench raids. This has really hit me hard, as those who died or wounded were in front of me at the time. 4 days ago, we had orders to move up to the positions in front of a copse or wood, known to lads as Mametz. On the 7th, I was told units from the 16th Welsh and the South Wales Borderers had left their positions and had moved off down the slope towards the wood. They were met by heavy German machine gun fire and then enemy bombardment. On the 8th, 2 further attacks on the wood were made by units from our 17th Division, but each assault was repelled by Jerry. I knew the way it was going, our battalion wouldn't be too long that we would be used, as we were receiving such great casualties. On the 9th, our company had now moved into the forward trench. The order had come down that the division will attack Mametz Wood tomorrow with a view to capturing the whole of it. In front of us was a slope that moved down towards the wood itself. It was 0300 hours or 3 o'clock in the morning that we were in position, ready with our bombardment commencing at 0330. After saying our goodbyes to each other and completing the writing of all our letters home to our loved ones, the attack was postponed until this morning. Early this morning, we were told the attack would be taking place. Again, at 0330, the bombardment would be taking place. We all again said our farewells and finalised our letters. I was shaking like a leaf. I was well aware of what had gone on before us, with the other lads not coming back. I thought it would be the end, and I would not see the end of the day. I overheard one of our captains telling another officer, at 0405, our battalion is going to take that wood, but, and then he paused, we shall lose our battalion. I felt the hair stand on my back and my neck. No one was going home. I had seen Swansea for the last time. We were checking all our kit was secure, all equipment with bomb and had sufficient ammo. An officer walked up to us. He said, "Boys, make your peace with God." We were going to take that position, and some of us won't be coming back, but we will take it. Following the completion of that tremendous bombardment, we all thought nothing could survive that. Then, at 0405, with our bayonets fixed, our battalion, along with the 13th Welsh who were next to us, were ordered over the top. The whistle blew, and we clambered up the trench ladders and onto no man's land. We began moving forward in 8 waves. We were walking in perfect order. We were told to walk and not to run, as to keep our shape. The machine gun fire and rifle fire was well trained on us. Words fail me to describe this stage of the attack.
Lads were just dropping to the floor all around me. The further we moved on, the heavier the casualties. I could see all our officers falling to the ground. It seemed the Germans were apt at picking them off. I could hear fast pinging noises of bullets passing over and around me. But we still pushed on. I was in the third wave. Somehow, I managed to reach the fringe of the wood. I could not see any sign of the first two waves. Some of the lads I knew had fallen. Some I'd passed lying on the slope. The others, I presume, had already entered the battered wood and were now lost to sight. Where I'd reached the wood, I was unable to enter due to tangled undergrowth, and I had to move sideways a short distance until I could find a point of entry. Once I got inside the wood, I saw the horrors of what had gone before me. I quickly saw where some of the earlier waves had gone, since I could see our lads and the Jerrys lying thick around the ground. I pressed on. Suddenly I saw two Germans in front of me in thick bushes. I shot at them with a few rounds of my SMLE or short magazine Lee Enfield. They quickly moved away. As I moved further in, I walked into a German. His body was hanging from the branches of a tree. He had been strapped into his position. He was a sniper. I could hear voices of officers who had survived the assault, barking out orders all around me. The whole situation was chaotic. Rifle, machine gun fire was thunderous. Bombs and shells exploded everywhere. As I dived for cover from the jaws of death, I saw Lieutenant Hawkins, a Welsh international rugby player before the war, charge down two German machine guns, both of which he captured, although not before he got wounded taking the second one. At 0450, the call went out to those of us who had remained that we had reached our first and second objectives, but the progress was slow. This was due to the heavy enemy machine gun fire, the poor visibility due to the smoke and the dense undergrowth. The Germans were being forced back. They were showing stubborn resistance to our advance, but I could clearly see they were not keen at close quarter work with the bayonet. When it came to the bayonet, Jerry did not show any enthusiasm to challenge us. By 5:10, we in the 13th were now supported by the 10th. As we advanced, their casualties and ours were left behind for our stretcher bearers to deal with. As I walked forward through the undergrowth with weapon ready to fire and bayonet fixed, I passed Jerry's. The cries of "Mercy, comrade!" We were not encouraged to take prisoners, and the fact that we had heavy casualties ourselves, we couldn't afford to have someone to escort them back. As I continued, there was little mercy shown on either side of this encounter. Jerry were fierce and ruthless warriors. Suddenly, shouts came for us to halt. We had advanced so far that we were now in danger of being killed by our own pre-planned barrage for 7 o'clock. We were ordered to fall back to our first objective. Once the tremendous bombardment had stopped, we had to move on again. There was a bloody hand-to-hand fighting which resulted in a lot of casualties. By 6:30 p.m, some of us had reached the northern edge of the wood. It's now 10:30 p.m, and we are awaiting a possible counterattack from Jerry. So here I now sit, awaiting for my brew. This is our battalion's first major engagement. We advanced on Mametz Wood, some 676 strong. Now, as I sit here at the end of the day, we have lost over 90 lads killed and almost 300 wounded, with the total casualties being recorded as 376. No doubt there will be others that will succumb to their injuries in the coming days and weeks, which make the real toll even higher. One of the lads near me, Private Thomas, has just told us all about a poem he is writing about this horrific day. It was a summer morning on the 10th of last July, when the order came to the Swansea boys to take the wood or die. Steady and determined, as if on a morn's parade, down the slope
across the ridge, like the boys' old brigade, the gallant lads of Little Wales and good old Swansea town, the leading battalion in the charge, and the order was laid down to take the woods at all costs from that warrior Colonel Hayes. Onward went the Swansea boys in the good old British ways. Onward, onward went the boys through their gruesome task. Comrades falling all around, but the wood was reached at last. Into the wood we went, sir, and we met the German horde. We showed them the way of the Welshman fights, and stuck to his new abode. Throughout the long hours of the night, sir, we stuck like British sons, faithful and true to that dear old flag, and our pals behind at the guns. Counter-attack at night, sir, by Hun and Bavarian creed, but we were boys of the good old stock, boys of the bulldog breed.
Here I am, in a captured Turkish trench, tired and only now starting to dry out from the seawater. We'd only been returned home from China on the 12th of January 1915, having spent the early part of the war capturing the German port of Tsingtao with our Japanese allies. We did this in August 1914. We are the only British regiment to have a battle honour for China. We disembarked from Blighty in March, and we are part of the 87th Brigade of the 29th Division. Rumour is rife that we were going to fight the Turks, who had stopped our navy from sailing through the Dardanelles. Our job is to clear the way on the peninsula, so giving them access to the straits and onto Constantinople. It has taken us a few weeks to make our way. Early this morning, we made a historic landing at the first part of the Dardanelles called Cape Helles. This feat of arms which took place could not have been achieved by no other soldier in the world but seasoned Welsh lads, the British soldier. After the storms that followed us over the past few days, the sea was flat and calm. There was a mist hanging over the Morto Bay. We were slowly steaming towards Sithavar. At 0330 hours, we had Reveille. Breakfast was at 4 and parade on deck was at 4:30. Our orders were explained to us by the NCOs. I helped to get 2 days iron rations. Our 3 companies had to land at Morto Bay, codenamed S Beach. Our company were going to be on the extreme right. We were told that trawlers would take us in as far as possible. Then we were to take the rowing boats and row ashore. Once ashore, we had to take the hill 236 at 200 feet from the beach and take the Detop battery. At 0500 hours, the barrage from the ship's round started. It was deafening. I looked over the side and towards the beach. I saw the pounding it was getting and thought, no one's going to survive that. I saw HMS Cornwallis signal to our ship. That was our cue. We climbed down from the nets and got into the trawler, which was number 362. Our platoon sergeant was doing his best to calm us all down. I can't swim. He looked at me and said, don't worry lad, you'll be okay. Just remember your training. On getting on the trawler, we loaded our spare water and reserve ammo. We were then told to stand off from HMS Cornwallis. Once all the trawlers were all full, we followed the Cornwallis into the bay. As we were told, in towards the bay
the band of the Cornwallis started playing Men of Arlich on the deck. Once we got in the bay, as we drew nearer, the mist was now starting to completely disappear. We left the Cornwallis behind, and as we moved forward, I heard loud salvos, whoosh, over our heads from the fleet behind us. It was a fine sight. I could clearly see the shells bursting on the peninsula, but thank God, as yet, nothing was coming my way. At 0730, we were starting to get into the rowing boats. I was frantically helping to put in the reserve water, ammunition, into our boat. On the signal from the Cornwallis, we started rowing for all our worth. Corp was shouting out, "Row, row, row." As we were 100 yards from the shore, we were now getting within range of the Turkish shells. One landed in the water close to us. I turned round as I was rowing. I saw them bursting in the water in front of us. I turned back to continue rowing. I was shaking all over. I began praying to myself. I looked over to my left. I could see the SS River Clyde. She was getting in very hot reception from Johnny Turk and the guns on the cliff above the beach. At 50 yards, our boat is receiving shells around us. Spray covers the boat. Bullets are also whistling around our ears too. I can see the Cornwallis behind us. She swept the beach and the cliff with shrapnel, and thanks to her, our boat escaped being scuppered. Suddenly, while rowing the boat, it grounded some distance from the shore. We were by now having tremendous sounds of bullets whizzing past. Corp screamed, "Get out, get out!" I dropped out of the boat. I was weighed down with full pack and ammunition. I was carrying 60 pounds of kit. With now being wet, my legs were buckling. I was waist deep in water. I then, with the rest of the other lads, started to haul the boat further up the beach. I saw one of B Company's boats get a direct hit. This resulted in 7 casualties, including the second lieutenant. I could see men in other boats also getting hit. They either fell out of the boat or slumped forward. From where I could see, their boats were coming under fire from Johnny Turk, lying in the trenches under the lee of the cliff, where our ships, with their guns, could not reach them. I somehow managed to drag myself up and bring the kit and the boat to shore. I looked at the beach. There was barbed wire everywhere. We were being shot at by rifle and machine gun fire. Anybody would have thought they already knew we were coming. The cliff in front of us looked to be rising straight out from the sea to a height of about 200 foot. Lads and I were wading thigh deep through the water for about 30 yards. The platoon sergeant yelled, "Come on lads, forward." I started making our way up the cliff. This was made more difficult as my puttees and trousers were wet through. The fleet must have seen where we were and moved their salvos further in. We got to the top of the steep cliff and I was exhausted. Just to my front, only yards away, there were defence walls and an old ruined fort. "This is Detot's battery," someone shouted. We fixed bayonets and rushed forward. We had no fire towards us and no Turk was in sight. I can't see why, when our shelling ceased, allowing us to charge, that Johnny Turk did not rush us straight away and push us back. We took the position with no opposition. It must have been a great virtue of surprise. We then set up an all-round defence, awaiting a counterattack that may come at any time. From where I was lying, I had a fantastic view of the other beaches being landed on. I saw the River Clyde had grounded on the point of the beach, with troops running out and falling into the sea. The view was one to behold. and to be in awe. B&C Company then followed and collared the Turk trenches in the west side of the fort. By 8:30 hours, position was secured. On charging the trenches with bayonets fixed, we captured 15 Turks. They looked really scared and dirty. At 0900 hours, I could see the landing at Set Behar. However, from our vantage point, it did not appear to be a success. I could see troops trying to work up through the ruined village, but without success and heavy casualties. Just been told there's very excellent supply of water in the trees just below Tot's battery. Great, I'm gasping. I know I'm standing here. We are continually being shelled, but without doing much damage, thank God. They must be from the Turk guns at Cwm Caw. We are now being targeted by snipers from Hill 236. They are making us keep our heads down. News just come up from the line. We're to move out and forward to Hill 114. Johnny Turk is retiring on being shelled by the Queen Elizabeth. Okay lads, move out. We've just been bombed by a Zeppelin. It came over about half hour ago. I can't believe that after what we've just been through, how I didn't meet my end just now. Our battalion are part of the 22nd Division, 67th Brigade. We are known as the Welsh Brigade, as it also includes the 11th Service Battalion, Royal Welsh Fusiliers, the 8th Service Battalion, South Wales Borderers, and the 11th Service Battalion, Welsh Regiment. I suppose sitting here, it'd be very easy to find descriptions of the Western Front, Mesopotamia and Gallipoli. But here, in Salonika, the events which have taken place are not so easy to find, and it is clear to me we're all being regarded as a sideshow. No one knows anything about us. I feel like we're the forgotten army, but lads here are dying in their thousands just the same. Here in this campaign, I know from speaking to one of the medics, for every casualty of battle, 3 die of malaria, influenza and other diseases. Back in 1915, we landed in Salonika in a combined Franco-British force of some 2 large brigades. We had landed on the request of the Greek Prime Minister. Our objective is to help the Serbs in their fight against the Bulgarian aggression. However, we landed too late for this, and the Serbs were beaten just before we set foot on land. Somebody then decided that we would be kept here for possible future operations, even against Greek opposition. The Greek King Constantine is pro-German, and some of his general staff have threatened, "You will be driven into the sea, and you will have no time even to cry for mercy." The outcome of the Gallipoli campaign has caused upset in the balance, and shipping in the area was involved, so we had no choice to stay. During the first 4 months of 1916, we did enough spade work to last me a lifetime. We helped place barbed wire around. Barbed wire has been used as a bastion for about 8 miles north of the city and connecting to the Vardar marshes to the west and the lake defences of Laganza and Bishik to the east, and so to the Gulf of Orfano and the Aegean Sea. This we have all named as the birdcage, on account of the quantity of wire we've all used.
Just in front of me, the Bulgarians had also fortified the heights of the hills surrounding Salonika during the same time, which I can tell you has had dire consequences for us recently. The original two brigades were reinforced by our division, the 22nd, and the 26th, 27th and 28th divisions. If the Bulgarians were to descend from their Dorian and Sturma heights, it would be very difficult to push us into the sea now. In the summer of 1916, we'd been reinforced by an international force. There are Serbian, Russian and Italian units. A Bulgarian attempt of an invasion of Greece in that July was repulsed near Lake Dorian. 1917 I found was very quiet, with comparatively little activity on our part of the front in Macedonia. The second lieutenant said it was due to the complex political changes that had been taking place in Greece throughout the year. However, the main fighting was still taking place around Lake Dorian. At the beginning of 1918, we were told that we were preparing for a major offensive. This was intended to hopefully end the war once and for all in the Balkans. The Greek army has now been reorganised, and the great news is that they're now joining us as allies. Although our battalion was not involved in the offensive, which began in July 1918, it was only until a few days ago that we took part in the offensive. We had a briefing by the CO. He said we need to attack a series of fortified hills. Some of the other brigades are already engaged at Lake Dorian since the 15th. Our job is to carry out a frontal assault near Pit Ridge. This is 2,000 foot high, heavily defended mountain ridge, with fortresses built on the mountain. He continued, we are to assault Grand Couronne. I knew this hill is where the Bulgarians had been working on in the first months of 1916 and early 17. I knew we were going into a hill of death, and we were going to sustain very heavy casualties. I know the Battle of Dorian will be a forgotten episode of the Great War. We are going to be overshadowed by the doings of Hague in France and Allenby in Palestine. Yet I feel by the end of the assaults by us and the other brigades, we are going to be singularity of horror and in tragedy of defeated heroism. It would be unique amongst the records of British arms. I knew from the looks of our officers that the real work of the assault is going to be entrusted to our 22nd Division and the 26th. The Dorian Hills are to be attacked by us with cooperation from the Cretan Division of the Greek Army and a regiment of unreliable Zouaves with French colonial troops. Then in the early hours, following a tremendous bombardment by our guns, the whistle blew. We climbed up the ladder from the safety of our trench and into no man's land. I fixed my bayonet to my SMLE and placed a round in the chamber. Early light was an almost unclouded morning. We kept perfect order of battle and spacings were textbook. I loosened the chin strap on my helmet. The noise of our guns was then abruptly ceased before daybreak. Then came that awful pause in which defenders and attackers alike are braced up to face the ordeal with fear or desperation, with cool courage or with blazing ardour. As I moved forward, slowly, the pale grey smoke lifted away in layers of a thin film above the ridges. Blue shadows deep in every fold or hollow, and a dim golden glow was on the scrub, rock and heather. One of the lads shouted, "Them guns have done nothing." I looked. No one could tell what the effect was of our fire upon those fortified hills. We, the Welsh Infantry Soldier, rely upon the guns behind us. We trust in their power to smash a way through our advance by killing, demoralising the enemy and cutting up his defences. The nearer to the objective we were getting, any hopes or illusions were quickly undeceived. As we reached our first objective, I noted that we had not lost many lads. Some had dropped to the ground, these had to be left behind, and we were told not to stop. Then, suddenly, the assault was met with a crash of machine gun fire. and a cloud of dusty smoke began to blur the outline of the hills. I was now hearing screams from the lads being hit and cries of "Mother!" echoing all around me. I was shaking to the bone, but I still had to move on. Immediately I could see, as I fell to the ground, we'd been overwhelmed in a deadly stream of bullets, which are whipping and whistling down the open slopes. Grand Corone was clear in the distance. Through this murderous fire, we continued to move forward. By now, we were running up the slope. From what I could see, no mean feat of arms were going to surpass the glorious bravery of us Welshmen. I don't know how, but we reached a ridge. I think it's called Jamo's Ravine, or something like that. There I saw lingering gas. It's probably ours. I stopped, knelt down in a hail of bullets, and I put on my respirator. I was now shaking. My hands were shaking so much, I had difficulty getting the respirator on. Imagine, if you can, what it means to fight up a hillside under heavy fire, wearing a hot mask all over your face, dimly staring through a pair of clouded goggles, and sucking the end of a rubber nozzle in your mouth. At the same time, heat is pouring down from the brazen sky. In this plight, you are called on to endure the blast of machine gun fire, the pointed steel or bursting shell of the enemy. Nor are you called on to endure alone. You must vigorously fire back and vigorously assail with your bayonet. It is as much like hell as anything you can think of. Ahead of us, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers got as far as the hilt, only half a mile below the central fortress, before being driven back by a fierce Bulgarian charge. Every officer was killed or wounded. Following these came the lads from the 11th Welsh, who were also compelled to retire fighting. We, the 3rd Battalion, on the slope, were also offered up to perish in this awful day. However, some of the lads, including me, did run over a few of the enemy trenches, which are full of dead or dying men. Through constant fire, our battalion nobly stormed up through the haze of battle until we reached near some hills, which I believe are called Tassel and the Knot. Then, to my horror, all at once the haze lifted and we were left exposed in the open to a sweeping and overwhelming fire. Lads were falling all around me. Whizzing sounds were flying past my ear. My helmet blew off by a bullet. I fell to the ground in an effort to place it back on. Another bullet passed through my water bottle and the water was pouring out. Suddenly, in the noise, I heard an officer bellow, "Charge!" I began screaming as I ran, but my company was melting away as we were charging, most falling dead amongst the rocks. Somehow, I heard a call to withdraw. First I crawled, then got up and ran back towards our lines. As we returned in dribs and drabs, a roll call was made. Of our whole battalion, only 1 officer and 18 men are alive. All last night, while trying to come to terms with what had just happened, I heard wounded men crying on the hillside or down the long ravine. Some screaming for stretcher bearers. These sounds got less as the more time moved on. We had been flung against positions no infantry in the world could ever have taken by a frontal attack. An officer from another regiment, who had seen our assault, said, "You've all proved yourselves to be good soldiers." Didn't he realise that our 2 entire brigades have been annihilated? Order been given, we've been moved back for some rest. Come on lads, let's go.
I'm washed out. I've not eaten properly for days, and drinking water is nowhere to be found. I ran out of water in my water bottle a few days ago. Our battalion went to France with the BEF, or the British Expeditionary Force, as part of the 6th Brigade, 2nd Division. We arrived in Cherbourg on the 24th September 1939. We spent the winter and spring working on defensive line facing neutral Belgium. When Jerry invaded the Low Countries on the 10th of May 1940, our battalion were in training. But we were rushed to the village of Tobruk as reserve to the 6th Brigade. On the 14th of May, we first made contact with Jerry on the River Dyle at Ottenburg. Our forward company was subjected to intense mortar fire and a series of unsuccessful attacks through the day. While this was going on, our CSM, or Company Sergeant Major, told us that Jerry had broken through near Sedan. This was threatening our southern flank of the BEF. Orders were received for our battalion to withdraw. This came on the night of the 14th and 15th of May, I believe. We had been promised trucks to carry us back to the River Escaut, but these failed to arrive. So we had to make a withdrawal on foot. While marching, meals were hurried, and irregular rations were frequently supplemented by slaughtered livestock. Nothing interfered with our battalion's ability to march though. In one period of 30 hours, we covered 40 miles without leaving a single straggler behind. Late on the 18th, the trucks eventually arrived and took us to Rorke on the Escaut. There, we held the river line for 40 hours. The whole time, we were all being heavily shelled and bombed by Stuka dive bombers. On the 20th, Jerry again was looking to outflank the BEF. We received further orders to again withdraw to a rest area near Bethune. This break for us only lasted 2 hours, before we were ordered back into action to recapture 4 bridges over the Bassy Canal, south of Saint Fantnant. I think that's what it's called. This is where a new defensive line was to be established. The distance between the 4 bridges is 3 miles. Too much for one fit battalion, never mind a battle-weary one with no support. On the 24th of May, we made our first assault. It was clear to us all we were facing a far superior armoured force. Our battalion advanced westward, parallel to the Canal de la Lys, on our right. We took the hamlet of St. Flores, but we could not force our way to St. Venant. Meanwhile, I saw D Company run into an ambush and suffered heavy casualties. Next morning, B Company took the village of Rorke, south of St. Venant. I could see the lads advance in open order, using fire and movement by platoons. A copybook exercise culminating in a bayonet charge. Unfortunately, although they reached one of the bridges just beyond the village, I could see that they had found themselves surrounded and besieged, with 3 or 4 officers being wounded. They held the village until darkness, when survivors broke out in small parties. We again attacked a number of times, but were pushed back by Jerry with their armour. We received terrible casualties. Another withdrawal was the inevitable outcome. By this time, my heart was broken. I could not stop myself from feeling as if I wanted to burst into tears. The battalion was by now effectively wiped out. St. Venant and La Bassy is at the southernmost point of the Dunkirk corridor, which is being kept open by a collection of regular and scratch units. A heroic defence of villages and towns such as La Bassy, the Paradis, Castle, Wormolt and Bruges brought time needed to allow the bulk of the BEF and the 16th French Army Corps to begin evacuation from the Dunkirk pocket. On the order to withdraw, we had lost 759 lads, with only 3 officers and 80 of us making it to Dunkirk.
The road to Dunkirk is littered with cast-off equipment. Nothing too big, nothing too small. It was all there. The army vehicles which we were leaving behind is being burnt out to deny their use to Jerry. There is sufficient kit to keep an army and navy stores supplied for 100 years or more. There are vehicles of all kinds, large artillery pieces with their barrels spiked to lightweight tanks sticking up out of the waterways. The sight of all these valuable military pieces was depressing to me. It told the story of an army routed and defeated. Soon, what was left of us had entered the main port of Dunkirk, which appeared mostly to be in flames, and a loud dismal sound of collapsing buildings reverberated through the empty streets. As we walked through, it appeared there had just been an air raid. Dunkirk was in ruins. The roads were cratered everywhere, and tram lines stood on end where many of the bombs had landed. The corpses of mutilated soldiers lay everywhere, and the smell of burning flesh was sickening. What was left of us were told to carry on moving. We all made our way over the sand dunes and moved along the Pan, I believe it's called, which is a little to the right of Dunkirk itself. On getting here, I was speechless. What I saw made me lost for words. There are hundreds and hundreds of soldiers on the sand, and ships coming in, trying to pick them up. There are so many. I thought, they'll never get these lads off here. I did see the most magnificent bit of British discipline here. As I moved forward, I could see lads in the water. They stood in rows of 4. They stood in the water. The tide came in, and they went up to their chests, and then went out. And then it came back. I was there for 3 tides, and staying there at night. Of course, there was the odd lad who left the road for obvious purposes to nip back over the sand dunes. But when he came back, a hand would go up. Over here was the surreal but terribly British call. I was watching in horror as I saw Stuka dive bombers. They were diving with that horrific scream, which was sending utter terror inside me. They came down screaming and were knocking out the little boats that were trying to come in to the rows of lads waiting to be picked up. In the close distance, I saw a destroyer, actually packed with men on board, take a direct hit. It was upsetting to see it roll over on its side, with explosions and men falling into the water. I could hear screams from them thrashing about the deck. Many of them can't swim, I'm sure. By now, it appeared to be every man for himself. Slowly, we were losing lads to not only the relentless Stuka attacks and machine gun strafing by Messerschmitts, but Jerry was now so sufficiently close that they are shelling the beach. We're getting it always. We have tried already to get in one of the small boats ourselves, but with no joy. Hope has just come over. We're all to move out. He thinks we can try our luck on the ships coming in on the East Mole. Right, move out, lads. Oh, come on, Di. Get up, boyo. Don't you want to get home?
And here awaiting the order to move out, to make our way down the road, the waiting ship to take us off Crete. We are being battered by the ongoing dive bombing and shelling from Jerry. We were all exhausted from the constant tactical withdrawals. It's hard to believe it was so different only a few months ago. We disembarked on the 18th of February 1941. Then we mustered 21 officers and 830 other ranks. We were hastily sent to Crete
as reinforcements for the Aussies and the New Zealanders. We were told we were going as Crete had become a valuable refueling base for the Royal Navy and the RAF. It became a serious matter when Jerry took Greece. The past few months, however, were peaceful. We spent our time preparing defensive positions and dug slit trenches. Word had got around that Jerry was going to attack at any time. The expected onslaught finally came to us on the 14th of May. We were well dug in and around Suda Bay and around Force headquarters. From my slit trench, I could see over 600 Luftwaffe planes flying towards us. While trying to keep my head down in the slit, I could see them saturate bombing a nearby airfield and our sector. As they flew off, we awaited further waves of planes. By the time they had finished, they had silenced nearly all our 60-odd anti-aircraft guns. We endured 6 days of bombing, and remarkably, we suffered very few casualties. I couldn't believe how we could survive a pounding like that. Then, on the 20th, I was walking from the canteen when a loud scream of "Stand to" echoed around the area. To my horror, I looked up to the sky, and I saw waves of Junkers 52 troop carriers heading directly towards us. I ran as fast as I could to my slit. I put on my helmet and loaded my SMLE. From my slit trench, I could see over 600 Luftwaffe planes flying towards us. I've never fired a shot in anger before, and I was shaking, trying to put the rounds in. The planes drew nearer. Then, suddenly, paratroopers spewed out of every one of those planes. As they were falling, it looked amazing, but frightening at the same time. Then suddenly, enemy gliders started swooping around us. I could see 6 of these had planed down about 400 yards from us. From where I was firing, I could see Captain Evans. He was personally shooting up 2 gliders and men with a Bren. Another 2 were effectively dealt with on deplaning by the rest of the company. I could see 50 Jerrys land with their parachutes and take cover in a nearby monastery. These were overcome by 3 platoons from D Company, with 25 prisoners being taken. Bitter but confused fighting was taking place, not only here, but in other sectors of the island. Corporal Mrivin, MC, Tiffin located the gun in question and boldly led his section to silence it. All his men fell, but he went on unscathed. With a bayonet, killed the entire crew of 7, thus allowing the company to continue. In the Great War, I have seen similar acts of valour have VCs awarded for that. As it is, I've just been told Corporal McTiffin will be receiving the MM, the military medal, for that action. I could not believe the bravery of Jerry. Undeterred by the heavy casualties, they continued to send in wave after wave of fresh airborne troops. After a bloody week of battling, we had to make a withdrawal. I was informed by one of the sergeants that Jerry was now virtually in control of Crete. By the 20th, I was made aware that B Company had lost more than half their strength, though we didn't fare too much better either. After further days of heavy fighting, and on the 28th we found ourselves surrounded and virtually isolated in our Suda Bay position. We have been overwhelmed by the onslaught, by what I have been told 9 Jerry battalions. After a desperate firefight, the order came to withdraw. Everything by now was so confused, no one knew what was happening, and we were just waiting on the next order. It finally came. We were told to withdraw in scattered groups and to make our way 40 miles to our main base in Pisica. The 40 miles were all mountainous terrain, and we'd been shot at from all directions. I've just been told the Pioneer Platoon has been surrounded and captured. My company has been reduced to 2 officers and 20 men. Our CO, or commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Duncan, was last seen firing a Bren to cover our withdrawal. He too has been captured. About 300 of us have made it to Pisica. Many are wounded. Major Gibson is now in charge of the lads.
The Major has been ordered to send a composite company of 200 of us to go and support a commando battalion holding the last rear guard. Thank God I wasn't picked, unlucky devils. They marched off with extra rations and ammo under Major Griffiths. I doubt we'll see them again. I'm now sitting here in a makeshift slit. We are still under constant dive bombing and shelling. Today, 1st of June, the remainder of us were told that Major Griffiths and the lads, after holding off attacks, received orders by Force Headquarters to surrender. While awaiting the order to move down to the ship, we only number 7 officers and 151 other ranks. We are leaving Crete with some 200 dead and 400 odd being marched into captivity. Shout, just come up the line, we need to move. I'm knackered. I haven't had a proper drink of water for over 3 days. My rations ran out yesterday, and there ain't many of us left. We've just come under attack from Stukas, which have damaged some bedfoods, so it looks like walking it is. At the outbreak of war in September 1939, our battalion were in India. We had earned a high reputation in the Northwest Frontier Campaign in 1937. For the first 2 years of the war, we remained in Cawnpore on international security duty. But then, in November 1941, our battalion had its orders to sail for Iraq. When we arrived, our job was to guard and protect the oil fields against a possible attack from Jerry, which were then sweeping their way across Russia and towards our direction. But thank God this never materialised. In late May 1942, the battalion received orders to make our way with a gruelling overland trip to Libya. Our role was to take part in a great German-Italian offensive against Egypt. We were there to help hold back the Jerry push. We had heard about Rommel, the Desert Fox, and how he was playing with our own generals by giving them bloody noses from Benghazi and all the way back to Tobruk, where, only last year, there was a heroic defence by a mixed bag of units which had been cut off from another offensive by Rommel. This was a mixed bag of Aussies, British, Polish, Czech and other units, and they held firm until relieved by a counterattack. We had travelled 1,600 miles overland from Iraq. It was not the most pleasant of rides, and the dust and sand was constantly a pain to our breathing and the transport. When we arrived at a place called El Douda, I can tell you. Then, on the 16th of June, we got off the Bedfords. We were told we were now going to be part of the 20th Indian Infantry Brigade of the 10th Indian Division. We were to be alongside the 1st, 6th Raptuna Rifles were at Sidi Rezgaza, and the 3rd 18th Royal Gawal Rifles of El Douda. As we got our kit together, the corporal came over to me and some of the lads. He said, "Our forces have been routed by Jerry and we are now in full withdrawal. The British Army never retreats but withdraws. Orders have been given for us to defend our area, which has now been called the Box, to the last man." We all looked at each other. The situation seemed dire. We had just driven all this way, and now we were to defend a bit of sunburnt, dust-ridden, sun-baked land from Jerry. On the order given, we began digging in. Slit trenches and communication pits were dug. We were sweating all the time in the heat. The CO then sent our transport away.
and on seeing the dust clouds of the wheels disappear into the distance, we prepared ourselves for the siege. All the training does not prepare you for your own personal thoughts, and the thought of waiting here knowing that the chances of being strafed or dive bombed before the German armour comes pouring over us is not a pleasant one. You do start to think of home and whether I would see my hometown ever again. I looked at a photo of my missus and gave the photo a little kiss. I then placed it back in my AB 64 paybook and buttoned up my chest pocket. Early in the morning, we were coming under heavy mortar fire and machine gun fire as we were being probed by forward Jerry units checking our defences. I was so frightened, I'd forgotten to fire my S-MILI, but just held on to my helmet in a fetal position in the slit as the bombs dropped all around me. At midday, the Jerry infantry was spotted by a forward observation post. While gaining my composure, I could hear orders being bellowed out to a 2-pounder anti-tank platoon, which were not far from our position to open fire. These then engaged the enemy and a toing and throwing of shelling started. All afternoon, I and the lads were subjected to sporadic shelling all around us. I could then hear, from my rear, a loud roaring sound of engine, planes, flying in fast at speed. I looked up and to my relief, 2 Harry bombers, which are converted Hurricanes, and a Kitty Hawk came over my head and straight towards Jerry. The platoon sergeant, who was looking through his glasses, binoculars, was shouting, "Go on, lads!" He later told us these planes were attacking Jerry troop carriers and ammunition lorries. And from what he could see, the damage was terrible. He did say to me, "Don't worry, lad, there's still enough Jerry for all of us to deal with." From the safety of my slit, I could see at around 17:30 or 5:30, Sidi Regaza was being heavily shelled. The attacks continued throughout the night. Flares and shelling were lighting up the clear night sky. It was like seeing a firework display. You could be forgiven to enjoying seeing the sight if you didn't know death was to come as it landed. Throughout the night, the shelling continued. Then a signaller, who had just run out of the CO's pit, stopped and shouted, "The Rajput positions have just been overrun. Many of the Indian boys have been taken prisoner. The rest of them are withdrawing to Bel Hamed defences." Then earlier this morning, the 17th of June, our battalion positions were now coming under sporadic dive bombing and shell fire. Fortunately, no casualties at this time have been reported, thank God. At 19:30 or 7:30, the order was coming around each slit that we are being ordered to withdraw. Although this surprised us, I wasn't going to argue. I got getting with my kit ready. We are to move 70 miles east to a place called Solam. We made a textbook but hastily withdrawal. In the dark, noise was kept to a minimum. We were having to march back 10 miles, and in doing so, we were looking for the Bedfords, which are to transport us. On looking, no vehicle was to be found. Some of the lads started cursing the drivers. One of the officers was sent out by Lieutenant Colonel Matthews, our CO, to reconnoitre and find our transport. Word just come round, that officer has just been captured by Jerry before he could make his route back. Before moving off, in now unfamiliar ground, I was made aware Major GPG De Winton and Lieutenant TM Stevens are to stay behind as rear guard to cover our withdrawal. This rear guard, for which no transport could be made available, was composed entirely of volunteers.
I felt a lump in my throat on seeing them, as they knew before volunteering that their only future was going to be death or capture. The rest of us moved off for Sollum. It was not until 03:30 that the transport was located, all to the relief of all of us. We all got in the back of the Bedfords and what other mishmash of vehicles that were present. By now, I hadn't slept for many hours, and I was fighting to stay awake. Corp shouted out, "Get your heads down, lads. Try and catch up on some shut-eye." He didn't need to repeat himself. I was gone. About an hour in, I was awakened by nervous voices all around me. Jerry had appeared to have outflanked us, and tanks were blocking our route on the road. With no hope whatsoever of moving forward, we started coming under fire from not only machine gun fire from the tanks, but also shelling. Next thing, it was clear the CO had made a decision to move. I felt the lorry then turn off the road. I knew we'd been trying to outflank the Jerry tanks, and we're heading south. The only issue I could see with it was that we were heading straight into the desert. For several hours, we were running a gauntlet of continuous and murderous fire from all sides. I could see from our tailgate of the lorry, some Bedfords, around which had lads in, were taking direct hits and turning into fireballs. Screams could be heard before utter silence. I was quietly shaking, but I couldn't show it. I could hear our driver screaming out, "What's going on? I have no contact with anyone. Where are we going?" I could see many of our vehicles getting lost in the melee. We continued to run the threat of being blown up with shells dropping everywhere. Only a few lorries, which included mine, kept up with the CO. As the shelling was stopping, we reached Sollum. It was 7 hours of driving behind the forward Jerry units. At the time of reaching Sollum, we have lost most of our battalion. Over a short time, we were joined by a few stragglers. We have lost more than 500 officers and men. Most of them, I've been told, have been taken prisoner. Only 4 officers and 100 of us other ranks have made it. We've been joined here and then by other units, and by now we're going to be given orders to withdraw further. We are either walking, hitching rides, or commandeering anything we can find. All night long we move back towards El Alamein. The road was choked up in daylight. We are being attacked by Jerry planes. I've lost count on how many times I've had to dive into the stones and sand, fighting to cover myself up, to stop myself from being hit. To make things worse, I haven't seen one of our own planes for some time now. We eventually passed through El Alamein, where we all finally halted the German advance. Our orders have now come through. We are to move to Cairo and to a rest area. Our battalion is licking its wounds. By the time we are to reach our rest area, we are only going to muster 15 officers and 300 other ranks. Our battalion has been annihilated. I now wait here for transport to take us back. The rest of the remnants of the 1st South Wales Borderers were sent to Cyprus in case of an expected German invasion. In mid-August 1942, it came a great shock to the boys of the battalion that the regiment was to be disbanded due to the annihilation. The survivors were to be transferred to the 1st King's Own Royal Regiment. A small cadre of men were then sent back to Blighty to become part of the 4th Battalion Monmouthshire Regiment, which in December 1942 then became the 1st South Wales Borderers. Of the old regiment, the identity was to be kept alive in captivity.
around 10 officers and about 100 men were interned at Crete POW camp in southeastern Italy, while a further body of men was situated in a camp at Sulmona, some 30 miles away. The two sets of the regiment joined up in September 1943 when the Crete camp was transferred to Sulmona. At the end of that month, a mass escape was made by boys of the South Wales Borderers, together with groups from other units. Of these, 4 officers and some 30 men of the old 1st South Wales Borderers succeeded in regaining their freedom. The remainder were either recaptured and sent to prison camps in Germany or killed, as were Captain W. Wright and Lieutenant J. Tidy and the men with them.
It's the first time we've had time to rest. The lads are exhausted. We are waiting for more orders to push on. We are so close to Jerry that no one can light up and noise is to be kept at a minimum. It's my turn soon to be a lookout in the next hour and I can't keep my eyes open. I'm so tired. It seems so long ago now, but we landed at 12 o'clock 2 days ago on a beach codenamed Gold. I was aware that our regiment would be the only Welsh unit to land on D-Day itself. Our company were then given the order to get ashore. As I got off the landing craft with the rest of the lads, I jumped straight into the water and the weight of my gear, it just took me down. I'm not a good swimmer and I had trouble getting myself back up. I felt a hand then pull me up out of the water. I gasped for breath. It was the CSM, or Company Sergeant Major. "Come on, lad," he bellowed. My gear was now soaking and weighed a ton. As I got onto the beach, we had orders not to stop for anyone who got shot or hurt, and they were to be left for the medics who were coming behind us. Running up the beach, we were met by the odd sniper, but no one got hurt, and we got off the beach okay. I could see bodies of lads who had been in the earlier waves still lying on the sand where they fell. Seeing this really shook me to the bone. We entered a town off the beach called Arnhem. On our company's regrouping, I saw one of the lads from B Company approached by a young French girl, about 12 years. She was carrying a bunch of flowers for us. He took them off her and smiled. I felt it was then that we were doing the right thing. A short time later, we were ordered to advance on a radar station at Pulney and to knock it out. This was the first time I had to fire my number 4 in anger, and I was frightened all the way through the firefight. Later, as we walked along a footpath near the village of Magni and Besson, we heard a loud shot ring out. We all dived to the ground. All I could hear were shouts. "Someone's been hit! Sniper, keep down!" After returning fire, we got up and moved on. I was very upset to hear that a sniper had killed one of us. He was buried in a church yard nearby. Our next objective was to take the bridge at Orcs-sur-Arve, and on capturing it, to hold it until reinforcements arrived. This we did, and with minimum casualties. We then took the high ground north, only 3 miles away from Bayeux itself. That night, our CO, or commanding officer, had the pleasure to tell all the lads that we were the only unit to meet all our objectives by midnight that night, and were the furthest to advance. Then yesterday, the 7th, we were by now the furthest right of all the units, and we were asked to link up with the Yanks in line with the River Arve. 3 of our companies were asked to move down to Sully and to link up. As we moved down, we were met with a chateau and another bridge. This was strongly held by Jerry. A bloody battle between 3 of our companies and around 1,500 of the enemy took place in and around the chateau. We weren't expecting so many of the enemy. We were given a bit of a bloody nose, and we had to make a tactical withdrawal. Today we return to the chateau. It appears that Jerry has already moved on. In the night, we had received about 15 casualties following the initial battle. Word's just come down the line. Some of the boys have now linked up with the Yanks, units from the 1st American Division. So here I now sit, awaiting the next order to push on. I'm sitting in the jungle, facing towards the Japanese. We're awaiting our next order to move on. We've just been given 5 minutes respite from the heavy fighting. The lads are exhausted. We have been battling the Japs constantly for days. The weather here is atrocious. I will never ever moan again about how wet it is back home. The rain here is constant. It can rain for weeks on end, non-stop. We eat, sleep and fight in mud. Mud is everywhere. It sticks everywhere. And with a lot of weight we carry, it's very difficult to move in. You are permanently wet, either from the heavy rain or the humidity. The heat just zaps all your energy. There are snakes and other dangerous creatures that we have to overcome in the jungle. Disease is a constant threat between malaria, scrub typhus and other life-threatening infections. We have noted that for every one killed in action, 4 times as many of us have succumbed to illness. I've had malaria twice since we disembarked. A couple of days ago, the battalion were asked to push through the Arakan. There are only 2 roads through the Arakan. One has been designed as a railway and runs through a series of tunnels from Mongdo to Bethungang on the Mayu River. The Japs are in control of this road and are passing supplies from the side of the Mayu Hills to the other. Our battalion arrived in the area on the 20th of March 1944. Our first objective was to capture the 2 tunnels used by the Japs as storage and gun emplacements. For 3 days our artillery pounded the enemy with shelling and there was low-level bombing by the RAF. The order came then to advance. We began a determined attack which involved the taking of 4 enemy positions which were camouflaged in thick bamboo and which they lay one after another on a spur which was commanding the approach to the feature over the first tunnel. The battle developed into fierce hand-to-hand fighting. We pressed on doggedly. Our unit have only just been told that Sergeant Woodhouse is going to be given the DCM, Distinguished Conduct Medal, for capturing an enemy post single-handed where its fire decimated his section. In 2.5 hours of bitter fighting, we drove the Japs back and established ourselves over the first tunnel. We could hear the enemy, however, still in the tunnel underneath us. Lads from D Company attacked the spur on the other side of the tunnel in support of our advance. But, alas, they failed to take the objective and have suffered a number of casualties in the process. I understand the lads are calling the spur of the tunnels Tredegar Hill, as the majority of the lads killed have come from Tredegar. Yesterday, due to the heavy fighting, a Sherman tank was called up to help us via the use of my wireless. It was brought up to fire into the mouth of the tunnel. From where I was crouched down, the effect was spectacular. I could see without a shock bodies of the enemy and debris blown out of the other end of the tunnel. The ammunition stored inside exploded. I could feel the shock and the vibration. It has been burning now for hours. Today, we have gone into the tunnel and occupied it. Word down the line, it is going to be aptly named 24th Tunnel. It appears the Japs have now abandoned Tredegar Hill without any further fighting taking place. We have, in the process of the action, lost 11 lads killed. Word just received. Major Crew Reed, commanding B Company, will be awarded the MC, or Military Cross, with an Indian water carrier attached to our unit and who helped evacuate the wounded is to receive the MM, or Military Medal. So, here I am now, awaiting further orders to move on. And it's just started raining.
Jap's just over there. They can't be more than 50 foot away from our position. Orders made to hold our ground and await the counter-attack. In November 1943, a new phase of the war in the Far East began, with formation of the Southeast Asia Command under Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten. Previously, we would have fallen back when the Jap would have cut our lines of communication, with operations ceasing during the monsoon. Now, our policy is to stand firm and to rely on air supply if and when we are cut off, and to fight our way out and on through the harshest conditions. In March, we were informed that the Jap 15th Army had begun an advance against us at India's north-east frontier. This appears to forestall a planned invasion by us into Burma. Travelling on foot through the jungle, Jap intends to capture our supply bases on the Imphal plain and to cut the broad linking Dimphal with Imphal at the hill town of the village called Kohima. I knew it wouldn't be too long that we'd be thrown into the fire to try and stop the advance. It wasn't long that the order came down for us to move forward. The travel was long and endless. With Imphal in Jap hands, they will also be able to interrupt our air supplies to China. This location will also give a Jap base from which it can launch air attacks into India. On the 29th of March, Jap started their attack. My battalion at this time were 2,700 kilometres away in our training base in India, trying to complete our months of grueling jungle training. News was coming through. It was looking grim for lads holding out at Imphal and Kohima. We reached positions just outside Kohima on the 28th of April. We were on the Dimphal highway. We received orders to mount a frontal assault on Kohima Ridge from Garrison Hill. 2 years prior, these types of attacks would have been unthinkable in the British mindset. Neither would our units have had the training for it or the confidence in our ability to accomplish it. A lot has changed in Singapore in 1942. The attack was successful, but God, we paid for it with loss of life. The distance between our positions to the Jap is only about 50 or 60 yards. Last night, the Jap managed to breach our position on Garrison Hill near the cookhouse. Garrison Hill is cone-shaped with a small plateau that our battalion has been clinging on since we all arrived. Jap trenches are over the forward slopes and the surrounding high features just over there. Our companies are on the edge of the British position, and any type of movement in the day is difficult. This is due to sniper fire, shelling or grenades. The forward slope runs south and onto the Jap-held Kukis Piquet. After close to hand-to-hand fighting, we managed to fend them off. As the assault came towards my position, I was petrified. I couldn't stop shaking. The amount of Jap that overran my position looked like in their hundreds. They were screaming "Banzai" as they passed. I lay in the burrow of the trench. I held my breath, watching the Jap running past me. Those hours were the longest in my life. How they never saw me, I'll never know. Not long after my position was retaken by some of the lads, I then took part in retaking the ground lost. It was bloody hand-to-hand fighting. I was face-to-face, fighting for my life. Along with B and D companies, we crawled through the shallow, muddy trenches. We were making our way to take over the forward dugouts and slit trenches. We continued to be subjected to fire from snipers in the trees overlooking our area. The whole area is strewn with empty cartridge cases, ammo boxes, tins and abandoned kit. This was clearly debris from our and the previous fights, which we have not been able to clear up. My most lasting impression will live forever in the stench of decaying bodies, half buried or lying in the open between our lines. In some of the slit trenches in my own area, rotting bodies of Jap were being used to form protective parapets. Mercifully, lime has been available to us to make the task of us being there less tasteful. Of the live Jap, I could see none visible and no visible sign. Their forward position is only a few yards away, down the slope. By day, they must be staying underground, with only the odd occasional shot or grenade indicating where they were. Earlier this evening, 2 Curtis command planes dropped water and rations to us. We were on stand to, in readiness for an attack when this happened. We've also had half a dozen Dakotas fly in ahead of us. They came up the valley, circle round us on the garrison hill, and then release coloured parachutes for our supplies. Of course, some would land in the Jap lines. Some would end up caught in the trees. Some of the lads would try and shoot through the paracord or the branches to release our precious cargo. Some loads are dropped without parachute. They consisted mainly of chloride of lime. This is intended to discourage the plagues of flies which are spreading in the dead bodies piled around our position. Water is rationed to 1 pint per person per day. Washing and shaving is now forbidden, but thank God there is a brew 3 times a day. On the hill, our space is so limited, there are dugouts, latrines, cookhouses and graves so close together it is almost impossible to dig anywhere without uncovering either a latrine or a grave. I've been told that some of the sick and wounded are to be evacuated via our narrowly held part of the Dimpar Road. Rumours are some supplies are also trying to come up this way too. I'm not holding my breath, and I think we'll have to rely on the drops. I just heard earlier that 2 Hurry bombers, which converted Hurricanes, have just bombed and strafed Kirkis PK. However, 2 bombs have landed on one of our positions on the hill. Battalion HQ and some of the lads from C Company were subjected to friendly fire by strafing. We are so close to Jap, the CSM or Company Sergeant Major has just come round to tell us. We are to launch another attack on Kirkis PK. Our company, as well as C Company, are to conduct a frontal attack from the north and with 2 DLI, Durham Light Infantry, with tanks pushing from the rear of our position. We've now got orders to move forward and ready to move out. We are awaiting our orders to move out for further contact with Jerry. The word has gone round that there is hot food on its way up the line, the first for many days. All we've had is basic compo, rations to eat. We're all tired, but in good spirits, having just completed the liberation of Arnhem and Oosterbeek. Back in October 44, our battalion, after 7 months of continuous fighting, made it into Holland. We had spent the arduous and miserable winter on the island. This was an area of land held between 2 branches of the Rhine, the Nieder-Rhine and the Waal. This area figured so prominently in the fighting of the airborne lads attempting to seize Arnhem in September last year. It is joined to the mainland at Nijmegen by 2 bridges. The island, however, is a waterlogged lozenge of land. We were being overlooked by Jerry from the higher ground to the north, and were subjected to regular machine gun fire and shelling. Jerry were only 20 yards from our positions. Their positions could only be reached by boats or DKWs or amphibious lorries, also called as ducks. I had a miserable time there. Clothes, bedding and my feet were wet most of the time, and our patrolling often had to be done in boats. After finally clearing the island in late March, our brigade were all along the Rhine. It was obvious to us all the next step was for our battalion to hop across the river and capture Arnhem. Word soon came around, all the companies, that our battalion were going to be tasked to carry this out. After weeks of taking a pounding from Jerry and being permanently wet, we are now having the chance to get at Jerry once more. We are being always kept in the loop by one of our officers. Our original intention was to cross the river some miles west of Arnhem, opposite Winghagen. Then orders changed. It was decided our battalion were to attack Arnhem from the east. This included the crossing of the Issel. The operation was to be codenamed Quick Anger. On the 9th of April, our battalion were informed to start moving up to a place called Grossen. We were warned that the area would be full of mines and booby traps, but thank God the move was completed without any incident. On the morning of the 12th of April, our CSM, or Company Sergeant Major, came over to us. He sat us down and he said, "Make your peace with God, boys, we're going to be setting off soon." He explained briefly to us all, the plan is that the Gloucesters be crossing first and we would be forming a bridgehead. Then our battalion and the Essex boys were then to pass through and advance into Arnhem. The town had seen heavy and bitter fighting with the 1st Airborne boys some 7 months earlier, and which since that date had been fortified by Jerry. It was not going to be very easy to take. Then on the night of the 12th of April, we had orders to move off. The Gloucester boys were to move off at 22:30 or 10:30 at night, and our battalion at 0300 or 3 o'clock in the morning, a few hours later. We checked we had enough ammo and grenades and checked if all our kit was correct. We were even handed out buoyancy aids, which are life belts, in case we fell into the river. I hadn't seen these since I last wore one back in June of last year. While we were sat outside the road, a loud rumbling sound was heard coming towards us. Through the dark, I saw, to my joy, a convoy of Buffalo armoured amphibious vehicles were pulling up. I was so happy I was going to be dry during this crossing. We all struggled to get into our Buffaloes due to our kit weighing us down, but after many curses we all managed to get in. With us was the brigade signaller who was attached to our battalion. The order then came down the line. The engines of the Buffalo started up with smoke from the exhausts everywhere. We all then moved up to our forming up point. It was a clear and fine night. With all the noise, I couldn't believe that Jerry hadn't woken up to the fact and hadn't started shelling us. Suddenly, a huge sound of that, much like a freight train, passed over our heads. It was a preliminary bombardment of Arnhem. It was heavy fire and impressive. I thought on seeing this, nothing's going to survive that. Then, right on time, the Gloucester boys moved off and started across the river. I could see through the smoke all types of boats carrying lads across the rough and fast-flowing river. Then, at 3 o'clock, a whistle blew and our Buffalo began to shudder forward. It wasn't the comfiest rides, but at least I would be dry. As we moved into the river, I felt a shell hit nearby. We were drenched in water from the spray. It was only a short ride, but I was feeling seasick. The river was rough and water spray was everywhere. Suddenly, I heard an officer who was with one of our signallers start to scream. He was screaming obscenities at him. The language was so bad, I can't repeat it. I then realised that in the confusion and the shelling at us, the signaller had dropped the CO's map in the river. I was only just talking to him prior to us moving off. He was a good rugby player and boxer before the war. He had a nickname of Butch. As we drew near to the far bank, we all ducked down. The order was shouted to then get out. We had stopped near a wrecked railway viaduct. I managed to get my composure and my shaking had stopped. The ramp went down and with my bayonet fixed, I ran onto the wet slippery mud off the bank of the river. We kept running, horns down as I ran. We passed through the Gloucester boys and made our way up into Arnhem. The sound of bullets was zipping around everywhere. We were already making contact with Jerry and I fired a number of rounds my number 4. A password being used during the attack was to be Yorkshire. This would be replied by friendlies with pudding. If this wasn't heard, we opened fire.
as daylight was beginning to show itself. I heard loud whooshing coming over our heads. It was Typhoon ground support planes. We all cheered as they passed over us, their bombs landing in Arnhem itself. As we moved into Arnhem, I knew our battalion were to be the first to liberate it since the effort of the airborne boys. I felt such pride at this, as did the rest of the lads. On walking down a street, we heard a loud crack of gunfire. I hit the ground with a thud. Loud screams were being called out. "Get down, sniper!" I noticed someone had then brought up a Piat, a projectile infantry anti-tank, and then fired it into the window of a house not too far away. It silenced the sniper. By now, we were joined from the boys from the 2nd Essex. Our orders were now to clear the western half of the town. The town was a mess of blown up buildings and burnt out tanks, with bodies of those who had fallen months ago lying where they fell. House to house fighting was murderous. It was hand to hand for a time. There were many casualties. I then heard reports the town was in our hands. By now, we had orders to left turn and head to Oosterbeek. I was told that while we were fighting in Arnhem, the engineers had made a Bailey bridge and that it floated it all the way down the river. It was now allowing our armour to pour in across it. This made me feel so happy. We were now going to get tank support. On the 16th, we made our way from Arnhem to Oosterbeek. I did stop and have a look inside some of the houses just to make sure Jerry had gone. Being curious, while searching one of the houses, I lifted a blanket on a bed. I jumped back. I was in shock, but at the same time, my heart was broken. I was faced by a mummified British paratrooper from last September. I placed the blanket down gently and moved on. As I entered Oosterbeek, it bore the signs of a desperate battle, which the airborne boys had waged the previous September. There were shattered houses, jeeps, equipment and parachutes lay tangled in heaps. Graves were everywhere and some bodies remained unburied. I thought this was an impressive memorial to the valour of the 1st Airborne Division and the heroic resistance they offered. I turned around and away in the distance lay the remains of the bridge for which they fought in vain and died. I saw crash gliders and tank tracks around the fields past. I was told with the rest of the company to stay away in case of booby traps. Fighting began to get limited. A few of Jerry showed no inclination to fight, and our progress was only made difficult by swarms of excited children, all waving flags, throwing flowers and shouting to us, "Good boy, Tommy." I felt I could cry. It was truly an amazing and exhilarating experience, and one realised how great was the relief of the Dutch to be freed from their oppressors. It's now 17th of April. I kneel here up against a wall in a street and back in Arnhem. We are awaiting orders to move off westwards for more contact with Jerry again. Call just come down the line. It's time to move on. It's hot and dusty, and I'm waiting for the nod for us to have a drink of water from our canteens. Last November 1951, we disembarked at the South Korean port of Busan. Prior to this, A CO or commanding officer had inquired via the ministry whether there would be any restrictions for importing live goats. There would not be an issue. To the curious bemusement of the locals at Pusan docks, we were led down the gangway by Taffy 9. At that time, our battalion mustered 38 officers and 746 other ranks. I was made aware our battalion would be allotted to the 29th British Infantry Brigade. Also included in this would be the 1st South Wales Borderers and the 1st Royal Welsh Fusiliers. Within 72 hours of disembarking, we were ordered to take over a reserve sector from the 1st Gloucesters, who the previous April had won 2 VCs or Victoria Crosses for their heroic stand on the Imjin River. Our first year spent in Korea resulted in our battalion as a whole not having any opportunity for such heroics. Most of our time when we moved up to the Yongdong was to endure 4 bitter winter months of arduous, if not mostly unrewarding, patrol activity in the weather conditions not unlike from those my father was in the Great War. And in temperatures down to -45 degrees of frost and snow. We lived and slept in bunkers which were under constant shelling and mortaring from the enemy. Daily and nightly fighting or lay-up, i.e. an ambush, patrols and wiring fatigues took up most of our time. All too often, the wily Chinese did not allow us time to rest and also never allowed themselves to get caught. Many a time my section would return and have to say NTR or nothing to report or no contact. However, this was not always the case. On occasion, we did have contact, which resulted in casualties on both sides. The strength of our patrols would vary according to what tasks were required. This would be from having 1 officer and half dozen lads for a short-range recce, or 1 and 25 lads, or more as a fighting patrol. This latter, we would be armed with 6 LMGs, Bren guns, besides Dens, number 4s and grenades. We would also have 3 signallers who would be laden with their number 88 wireless sets. Our rations, which each man has been issued and carried, are 2 tins of American issue C7 rations and 2 tins of self-heating soup, together with 6 bars of chocolate and 6 packets of chewing gum. During the heat of the hotter months, the chocolate has a tendency to melt and cover the rest of the rations. It would also induce thirst, so we have boiled sweets as a substitute. In addition, we each carry a field dressing. A supply of morphia tablets is carried by the corp, or corporal. While patrolling, our battalion's main operational task throughout the campaign were, and the rare occasions when a large-scale all-arms attack would be undertaken. One of these engagements we started 2 days ago. It was for the night starting the 23rd to the 24th of June 1952. The operation has been aptly named Operation Maindy. Some of the lads were told it has been named after our regimental depot in Cardiff. Our objective was a hill known as Hill 227. During the briefing prior to 0 hour, we were sat down by the CSM, or Company Sergeant Major. He said, the hill is defended by around 140 Chinese in a complex of bunkers. He continued, an assault was done by another unit back in January. This had been repulsed with many casualties. He continued about our great history and to show our mettle. He finished with the words, Cymru am byth. Our confidence was raised by this. Our company were told we would be supported by sappers, Royal Engineers and 3 batteries of gunners.
Following a very heavy barrage, which seemed to last an age, we moved into the line of departure in the early hours just before light yesterday on the 24th. My platoon and another were to move forward with our third in reserve with headquarter company. Our platoon was on the left and the other on the right. Call came around and we moved off. Bayonets fixed, and I put one in the chamber. Initially, we had no contact with the Chinese, so much so that I thought they must have bugged out during the bombardment. However, the further up the hill we walked, we were met by a hail of bullets and grenades. I dived for cover and opened up towards the enemy positions. The dry undergrowth was starting to catch fire, and with the noise of gunfire and the smoke, it was difficult to see and hear the orders that were being bellowed. After a fierce exchange of LMG fire and grenades, we succeeded in capturing one of the first bunkers. Chinese dead lay all around us. During the firefight, our platoon commander was wounded. However, he continued with the action. On securing our position, message came over from the wireless operator. The platoon to the right had cleared 3 bunkers. But on doing so, they'd come under a hail of grenades, which had killed the corporal of the lead section. Suddenly, our section came under tremendous fire and grenades which were being thrown from the trench and bunker system above us. While giving supporting fire, the leading sections from the platoon on the right engaged another bunker. Through the fire and smoke, I saw the platoon leader get hit by burp fire and fall down as he ran. Our platoon leader again got hit, which put him out of action. The platoon sergeant was sat near us in a shell hole. He was with the wireless operator. Suddenly, a huge whistle of a mortar bomb hit them direct, killing both the platoon sergeant and the wireless operator. They were there 1 minute and gone the next. I was horrified. While keeping up constant fire and learning that both platoon commanders were casualties, word came over the wireless that the company commander was moving forward to our position. Under constant fire, he arrived to our position. On orders given, we consolidated the remaining lads from both platoons. We then made a textbook section by section withdrawal back down the hill. This was successfully carried out. Operation Maindy had cost B Company, as of a few hours ago, 2 men killed, 22 wounded, including 2 subalterns. During our early stages of the attack on the hill, our artillery were putting down murderous fire on the Chinese mortars. News just come over that the lad who had been directing the artillery had been killed with the wireless operator, badly wounded. I do not know how many Chinese we have killed, as they have a habit of removing their dead from the field of battle, as did we. In fact, we have managed to bring all our dead and wounded down from the hill. Sant has just said that Major Jackson is going to be given the DSO for the action. I'm tired, hot and thirsty. I cannot believe what we've just been through. Words just come up. Bedfords are on their way and we're going to be moved out.
I sit here awaiting the Westland Whirlwind helicopters to come in and to pick us up and to take us back to camp. I'm hot and tired. We've only now completed contact with the terrorists, and damn, I could murder a brew. In June 1948, a state of emergency was declared in one of our colonies of Malaya. The Malayan National Liberation Army, the armed wing of the Malayan Communist Party, began attacking rubber plantations, mines and police stations, derailing trains and burning workers' houses. The insurgency was described as an emergency
because insurers will not compensate plantations and mine owners if it is labelled a war. The communists of the MNLA are jungle-based and supported by the impoverished Chinese population. Although many Chinese are living in the cities, others are living on the fringes of the jungle and are aiding the guerrillas. These are known as squatters. The MNLA and its supporters are calling the campaign the Anti-British National Liberation War. Our battalion arrived in Singapore on a troop ship, Dilwara, on the 19th of October 1955. After a very short stay at the Nee Soon camp, the battalion moved off to the Far East Land Forces Training Centre at Toga. There we learnt on how to live and fight in the jungle. Our battalion had just completed a jungle course when we were about to complete our final jungle exercise, when word went around the company that the 9th Independent Platoon Malayan Races Liberation Army had just robbed and burnt the village of Kampong Tai Hong, just north of Takota Tinggi on the Johor River, during the night of the 27th and 28th November 1955. Our battalion moved into the jungle just northeast of the Takota Tinggi. 2 of our companies were taken into the jungle by a police launch. For the next 5 days, our company and others from the battalion searched the whole area, but there was no sign of the independent platoon. On the 2nd December, we had orders to return to the Nee Soon camp. Word got round that we were moving up country to Kulang, I think it's called. During the 13th and 14th of December 1955, our battalion relieved the 1st Battalion, the East Yorkshire Regiment, at Kulang. We were told by the platoon sergeant we were joining other units to take part in an Operation Huckster. Our battalion is to take over the imposition of food control on Kowloon town, on 4 new villages and 11 estate lines. On the 13th of January 1956, Phase 11 of the Operation Huckster began. This was a full-scale food lift on the Kulang town. Then, on the 21st of February 1956, Operation Tingley Pie began. Its climax was in the bombing of the 7th Independent Platoon camp in the Chamek swamp. We had orders to cordon off the area along with the 1st Battalion Fiji Infantry Regiment. Following the bombing ceasing, my company and the rest of the battalion began a search of the bombed area. I had missed the war, which a lot of the lads had fought in, and I hadn't seen a dead body before. We had found 13 members of the independent platoon and 1 injured communist terrorist who later died of his wounds. Amongst the dead was a political commissar. After Tingley Pie, the Era Hitam jungle became our focus of operations against the 3rd Independent Platoon. During these operations, our company, whilst on a standing patrol, we killed 3 of a mixed group of 12 communist terrorists who had walked into our position. We'd opened up with SLR, number 4s, Brens and SMGs. I was later told the dead were the branch committee secretary of the 5th Mes Batu Farat Road branch and 2 female members of the 3rd Independent Platoon. Of the other 3 communist terrorists wounded in the contact, 1 later died of his wounds in the jungle. Throughout this period, one of our companies was maintained on jungle operations, whilst the rest of us continued with the food control. On the 11th of June 1956, our company were asked to form an ambush patrol. We were commanded by Captain C. Morgan and Lieutenant Howell Jones. Acting on the information that had been received by battalion, we had opened up during the ambush. This resulted in 1 female member of the Noya branch being killed. I was told from the Corps a 2nd member of the branch had also been killed by C Company patrol during the follow-up operation. On June the 18th, 1956, our battalion had orders to take part in Operation Canterbury. This began with a bombing attack on the area of Sebrong River, north of Kulang, in which the Special Branch had deduced that most of the Kulang Malayan Communist Party district were camping. Our company, along with the rest of the battalion, had orders to fly into the area by helicopters of the 848th Squadron Royal Navy. Our brief was to again search the area for terrorists. On the 19th of June, a patrol from A Company, who were led by Captain Igab Goat, attacked a camp occupied by 10 communist terrorists. During the short firefight, 1 terrorist was killed. Over the next 3 days, the escaping terrorist group were being tracked by our mortar platoon, with devastating results. A party of 5 terrorists walked into our ambush party, commanded by Corporal Meredith. Following a short firefight, 1 communist terrorist was killed. This operation ended on the 29th of June. Only 2 days later, I heard that a 17-year-old Chinese member had surrendered to the Sembong oil palm group. Our battalion continued with the food control, rubber and jungle patrols in the Kulang area until the 26th of July. On the 27th of July 1956, the battalion again had orders and we moved to operational camps. These were prepared by company advance parties in the Sigmat area. On the 15th of August, my company, along with the rest of the battalion, are lifted into the jungle once more. This time, the north of Sigmat, and again in helicopters from the 848th Squadron Royal Navy. For the next 14 days, I, along with all the other companies, worked south through the dense jungle, and then in through the Selma small holdings. The aim of our operation is to learn the ground and to speak to villagers for the use of possible future operations. On the 1st September, my company, along with A, B and C companies, moved into the Sembram area. We were at this time under command of the 26th Brigade. We were joining in on an Operation Falling Cloud against Tang Phuc Lung and his 3rd Independent Platoon. We returned to Segmat on the 4th of September. Again, we were taking part in another operation, this time named Cobble. Our battalion had left Segmak area for the jungle south of Gemas. On the 5th of September, a party of support company, which included me, with representatives of the 848th Squadron and the 40th Gurkha Field Engineer Regiment, moved into the Gemas jungle. This too was very hard going and very dense, and had to be cut by machete to gain access in parts. On the 7th, we stopped and found a suitable clearing in the jungle. We blew a large landing zone. This then helped the rest of the battalion to be helicoptered in. This was to start another operation called Morning Crack against the Gemas Buaru branch of the North Segmat district. During the operation, we found a lot of very recently built or old communist camps, but the branch were not to be seen. On the evening of the 12th September, an ambush party had been drawn from lads from the battalion HQ and commanded by the Adjutant Major A.K. Sharp. They were acting on special branch information. It appears they have killed 3 out of the 4 terrorists who had entered their ambush position. The dead terrorists, all of the Bukit Suput branch of the Segmat Malayan Communist Party. They included Mun Leong, the district committee member, his wife, and another male member of the branch. The 4th terrorist escaped wounded. On the 15th September, battalion band and drums under Lieutenant R.I. Howell Jones have found a large pile of kit that was dumped at some distance away by the communist terrorist before they set off on the journey for which they were ambushed. On the 8th of October, again acting on special branch information, another patrol commanded by Captain La Napier and Lieutenant R.H. Godwin Austin attacked a resting place of the branch. This resulted in them killing the branch committee secretary of the Bukit Suput branch and another of the Tinang branch. Both were of the Segmat Malayan Communist Party district. On the 10th, my company, along with the rest of the battalion, were again helicoptered into the jungle north of Segmat. This time, we were as far as the Pegang border, I believe it's called. On the 26th of October, I, along with the rest of the battalion, were moved to Singapore. Our job is to be for internal security duties. Many of us had to be helicoptered out of the jungle before being placed on 4-tonners and driven to Singapore. After helping out at Singapore, we were again ordered back into Segmat area. This was on the 5th November, I believe. We then again carried out jungle operations. On the 1st December, an ambush party of B Company and commanded by Major A. Gwyn Jones, and again acting on special branch information, killed 2 male Chinese communist terrorists. Both branch committee members of the simpler branch of Segmat Malayan Communist Party district. Until the new year, we continued operations on a company basis, and at the same time we're finishing making preparations for the beginning of Phase 2 of Operation Cobble. The 5th of January saw Phase 2 of Operation Cobble begin. Our battalion have been tasked to set up gate checks. We are to man these continuously. We are all posted to a total of 25 gates. These are perimeter fences and rubber estates with small holdings regularly patrolled. Food checks are carried out in all the new villages and estates that come within our battalion area. On the 14th of February, acting on information from Special Branch, a combined ambush party from both B and C companies, commanded by Major Gwyn Jones, had killed Yap Cow, a male member of the Semplar branch of the Segmat Malayan Communist Party district. On the 15th of February, C Company moved into the jungle to search for a camp, where it was thought that Yap Cow may have come from. It appears they have found a hurriedly evacuated communist terrorist resting place just on the jungle's edge. Close to this resting place, it was found a large acid jar containing 40 catties of rice. On the 7th of March, the lads from B Company and a party from the 1st Battalion Rhodesian African Rifles ambushed and killed a member of the Semplar branch. On the 14th and 19th of March, the training wing of the battalion carried out an operation on Mount Umpho with 3 terrorists surrendering from the West Segment Malayan Communist Party district. On the 16th of April, a reconnaissance patrol from our support company had killed a male member of a party of 3 communist terrorists, who they met in one of the Semplar small holdings. On the 14th of May, our battalion started Operation Rising Lift. We all used a very large number of standing patrols that we established across the routes that were known to be used by the communist terrorist, moving between the jungle and the rubber plantations. Half of our battalion were lifted into the jungle by helicopter. The remainder, including me, walked at night to the edge of the jungle. We all used a very large number of standing patrols that we established across the routes that are known to be used by the communist terrorist, moving between the jungle and the rubber plantations. On the 16th of May, a patrol of C Company, commanded by Lieutenant G.L. Davis, killed a number of terrorists who they saw fishing in a stream near their own positions. One of the dead terrorists was identified as a member of the Semplar branch. On the 20th of May, word was going around that the branch committee member, Meng Li, of the Semplar branch, had surrendered. He was the second of 2 communist terrorists contacted on the 16th of May. Hearing this good news, our battalion were returned to food control duties. On the 8th of June, our battalion left Segmat, to the relief of all the lads. We had been lucky. I don't think we lost a single person on the operations. A miracle when you hear about some other battalions. Only casualties we were getting were from various jungle illnesses and bites. Both our company and C Company are relieving the 2nd Battalion Royal Welsh Fusiliers in South Johor. The remainder of our battalion are moving to Singapore. On the 30th of June, we all met up and were concentrated at the Serang Barracks at Singapore Island. We are here for retraining, as if we didn't have enough on-job training during the operation, but you know the army. On the 16th of September, our battalion tactical headquarters with B Company and C Company are moved to Tampoi on the northern outskirts of the Johor Bahru. Our companies began operations a few days ago against a Pontain Malayan Communist Party district. It's the 22nd of October. Sergeant Major has just informed us that the terrorists have just walked into a standing patrol from C Company. 2 male Chinese have been killed and 6 packs recovered. The terrorists have just been identified as a branch committee member of the Pontain Road branch of the Kwai Hoi, branch committee member of the Gulang Puta branch. I think that's how you say it. Sound of helicopters arriving and the landing. Right, come on lads, let's move out. On a hot and sunny Singapore morning in September 1958, the troop ship Dilwara swung away from the quayside. The band of the Royal Marines playing the Welsh national anthem across the water as the troop ship pulled away. Through the last cheers and cries of the waving crowd, to be echoed in song by the lads from the battalion who lined the ship's rails of the ship. Colonel Richard Myers, who had commanded the battalion through Malaya, with a characteristic gesture, was in front of the crowd on the quayside, waving his hat above the crowd. A last farewell to our battalion, he is leaving. This received the last and loudest of cheers. The medal roll for the battalion, the General Service Medal with clasp, Malaya, contains 1,585 names. This means that the personnel in the battalion was renewed twice over the 3 years in Malaya and Singapore. Order just come to hold it up a little, while lads from the RUC are mopping up Bombay Street, where a member of the IRA has just been shot by a loyalist sniper. Deep down, I'm shaking, but I can't show any of it to the lads. It was only a few weeks ago, I think, time stops when you're over here, that our regiment was being amalgamated from the 2 regiments of the South Wales Borderers and the Welsh Regiment. The amalgamation took place at Cardiff Castle with the 2 regiments. It was done in front of Prince Charles, who was appointed our Colonel-in-Chief. This was his first army appointment since becoming the Prince of Wales. Within 2 months of this, we were being posted to Northern Ireland under the named Operation Banner. We became the first British troops to be deployed in Belfast. Both my company, which is B Company, and A Company were sent to take control of the Lower Falls Road on the night of the 15th, while the lads from C Company had been deployed to Derry some days earlier. We had been sent to Belfast as it coincided with terrible troubles, which is a so-called low-level war. This was being fought on nationalist grounds, with Unionists
favouring continued union with the UK, and the Republicans wanting a united Ireland. Both sides are committing atrocities, with bombings of pubs, cars, houses and streets across the UK and Ireland. Prior to us being deployed, shootings were now commonplace. We have been faced with snipers, roadside bombs, assassinations and murder. Yesterday, violence had continued along the Falls-Shankill interface. A large loyalist mob moved down a street called Cooper Street at about 1500. They were held back by nationalist youths. From what we were told, shooting began about 1545 or 3:45 in the evening. Almost all the houses in Bombay Street were burnt out by the loyalists, with many others being set on fire in Kashmir Road and Cooper Street. This was the most extensive destruction of property that I've ever seen. The CSM walked over to us. He said, "We've received orders that disorder has spilled out all over the place, and are now to move in to stop the violence." At about 6:30 or 18:30 hours, he was deployed on the Falls Road. We pulled up in some 4-tonners and Landys. We all got out, and to my shock, we were being greeted with applause and cheers by the local residents. But we had orders not to intervene at this stage, and the pleas from the locals to help were not answered. I felt I had to do something, but I had my orders. At about 21:30, 500 hours, or 25 to 10 in the night, we finally received orders. We walked over to the blazing interface with textbook spacings and carried our SLRs, or self-loading rifles, along with our 58 pattern webbing and Mark IV helmets. On reaching the interface, we began blocking the streets with barbed wire barricades. That was brought up very quickly to us. We closed off the street, I held my SLR tightly, and which I had the safety on. We had been issued live rounds, but we had been ordered not to fire unless fired upon. I suddenly felt an intense sense of alertness as I was looking to my front. While standing behind the barricade on the Falls Road, one of our officers walked past me with a loud hailer. He started bellowing out orders for all the persons to disperse and called on the loyalists to surrender. After a short pause, all hell broke loose. Petrol bombs were being thrown at us from all directions. Lads were ducking out of the way, and a few had a couple of near misses. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. We had come here to police and calm things down, and we were being attacked. Still, we could not fire back unless the order came from one of our officers, and that is only if any of our lives were directly threatened. So we just had to stand there and take it. Whilst being petrol-bombed, the loyalists continued to burn more Catholic-owned houses on Bombay Street. I felt defenceless that all these women and children were running away, screaming, when the houses were being torched, and I couldn't do anything. A few hours, we had orders to stand our ground, being pelted with bricks and large stones, as well as anything else that could be thrown. At one stage, a metal bin was thrown at me, but gladly missed. A few hours of receiving this, the order finally came for us to use tear gas in an effort to disperse the mob surrounding all of us. On the order to fire, a number of tear gas canisters were fired into the crowd. The effect was many of them running away. It was a long night, I can tell you. Although the violence towards us was not as great, it persisted on and off all night. We were joined then by an armoured Landys from the RUC in the early hours. I'm tired now and getting hungry. We've just been told a bit of grub is on its way. This had the biggest cheer of the night from us all. So here I now wait to move out. The RUC are now nearly finishing up. I don't think that this is going to end too soon. I hope it does, not last too long. But I think if these troubles don't get sorted very soon, it will last for years to come. Alright, come on boys, orders come out, let's move.
move.